How are you?
I'm okay. I have the Rona.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
Well, wonder now you're currently?
currently.
Well, isn't that lovely?
So I'm gonna be muting a lot to cough, but
I'm sorry. I'm glad you're not suffering too much from it.
I'm heavily medicated at the moment. So
Well, good. That's actually that's when I like you best.
yeah, that does seem to be the general consensus.
uh, well, how do you want to do this? What have you got in mind? I can just talk and tell stories, or you can ask me questions and I can tell stories.
Yeah, I think talk and see where it goes.
Awesome.
So I was gonna see if you could start with that trip you did with Mr. Jim.
Yeah, let me tell you how that's set up because to me it's pretty funny. Is Marie and I were out on the road, went out to see our kids, so we drove out to California, and we're on our way home. Home, that's a real relative term these days. We were on the way back to my parents' house and late, I believe, Saturday night, and it was late, 10:30, 11 o'clock maybe. I get a text from my friend Jim Taylor over at the Point Church. And Jim says, I know it's short notice, and I probably wouldn't ask anybody else, but I'm going to Cuba Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. You want to go? I like, this is crazy. There's no way in the world. And then I stopped and realized, I don't have a job.
Sure, yeah.
I think we said the Lord that we were going to be free to go where He sends us. Short notice. This is the way we wanted to live, and here I am sitting here in a hotel at 11 o'clock at night, thinking this is nuts. There's no way in this pandemic environment I can get all the requirements taken care of in time to do 48 hours, be on an airplane out of the country. But we said, well, we can just, we're sitting here. I literally had thrown my passport in my backpack before we left for California, thinking, hey, California, we might cross over the border into Mexico for some reason, it happens. And so here I am in Abilene with a passport, all of my documents, and I've got my go bag packed and all of my stuff packed. And I said, I actually am ready to go. So we drove Sunday morning over to Brandon, was able to get my COVID test and PCR test back, get all my stuff, all the requirements done, and get on an airplane for Cuba within 48 hours. So anyway, that's sort of the backdrop to the whole event. It really was a pretty amazing setup just to get us there.
So how long were you there for?
We were there. I got there Tuesday about noon, and we left there on Saturday about noon. So total of 4 full days.
Yeah.
And it was a very full 4 days. We were nonstop. They picked us up in Havana, had about a 3-hour van ride to the town that we were ministering in, and we ministered at 5 p.m. We started immediately, and it was that kind of pace. I mean, it was starting early and finishing late and doing it all again the next day. We covered 4 or 5 different churches that we ministered in. Some of those were mostly pastors and leaders. So there'd be some groups where some of those meetings were smaller groups of leaders, 40, 20, 30, 40 pastors and spouses in a couple of those situations, which were very special.
Yeah.
And then we had about 3 large open gatherings that were pretty exciting. Saw some things in those meetings that I have not seen since the old Toronto days in the vineyard, with people falling under the Spirit and being spontaneously healed and things of that nature. Things I have seen, but not in a long, long time. So it's very exciting to be in that kind of environment. The Cuban believers are on fire. The atmosphere when you would gather was incredible. And it's almost as a somebody who's ministering, you almost feel like you're cheating. I mean, your main job here is just to not screw it up. It is so exciting. They are lit up, and they're expectant, and they're waiting on you to come. And I kind of joked a little bit. I said, I don't think we have to say anything. I think it's already happening. There's nothing you can add to this fire. But the reality was that there was such a spirit of expectancy over everything we were doing. At one point, I just had a word of knowledge. Somebody here has a wrist that is that has pain. I think I just said you have pain in your wrist, and somebody kind of stood up in a crowd of maybe 200 people or so. Somebody stood up and was holding their wrist and came trying to make their way toward the front. When they got to the front, I want to do what we do. I'm going to do the 5-step healing model. I'm going to pray over this. And when I reached out and took her wrist, she fell out in the spirit. I never said anything.
Oh, wow.
and I'm, hey, I've got to work my systems. This irritates me. So I'm sitting here. I talked to, there was a young man kind of positioned there helping her catch her. And I asked him, I said, when she comes to, would you come get me? I kind of still want to do my thing. I've still got to pray.
Sure. Yeah.
And so when a little bit later, he comes walking up, leading her up to me. And when he leads her up to me, he says, she's better. You don't have to pray. It's healed. And on the bottom line, she said that had been damaged for quite a long time. I don't know, some years. That she had been struggling with pain in that wrist, and it was immediately gone when she got up off the floor. And, it's one of those funny moments when you realize you really don't have much to do with any of this.
Yeah. That's awesome, though.
So, and there were multiple stories of that nature. There was a woman with a back that had problems for a long time, and like I said, nobody actually prayed for her. She was in that whole environment, the presence of God moving and things happening, and I think somebody may have just laid hands on her, and she fell in the spirit. And when she got up, she's testifying that her back problem was healed. So those are pretty wild. That's when you realize that. God uses donkeys too. It's not always in your wisdom and your systems and your particular gifting. Sometimes it's just God's doing what God's doing, and you just get to be a part of it.
Sure, yeah.
We had one meeting with a group of pastors, probably 40 people with spouses and such. And I knew some of those pastors were like bishops. They were overseeing multiple churches and multiple leaders. And it was at least 5 different denominations represented in the group. So there were some Baptists, there were some Assembly of God, there were, I think, a Presbyterian, and some things I'd never heard of were in that group, but they were all people who are hungry after the Holy Spirit. We're really going to do some ministry that had been sort of planned, but when I got up, I began to speak to them really about the challenges that they had all faced over the last couple of years. I just said, this has been a very difficult couple of years for pastors and leaders, and essentially I just spoke to that and acknowledged that this has been special circumstances, and some of them had endured a lot in this last season. Their churches, some of them have lost people, some of them have shut down completely, some of them, it has affected them financially, it's affected them emotionally. And I just spoke to that a minute. and then just gave like a just prophetically over the whole group. I just said, I feel the Lord saying he's walked it with you, and he's saying, well done, my good and faithful servants. And when I did, you could just feel the presence of God fall in that room. And you've got leaders of leaders, and some of these people, if you know that when you walk in a room, you run into people who, these people carry authority. You know that feeling, you can see it on somebody, you can feel it around somebody. And you're watching some of these people and just begin to weep, and just to sense the release of a whole lot of angst and burdens and the stuff that had accumulated. And I walked around and just laid hands on each one, every person in the room, and just said, well done, my good and faithful servant.
Wow.
And it was a very holy moment. It was a sweet, sweet thing. And we just soaked in that for a while. So to me, thinking back, that to me was one of the real highlights. Wasn't a whole lot of power ministry and things of that nature happening at that moment, but the sweetness of the presence of God and his tenderness toward these leaders who had struggled through the last couple of years. It was really, really precious. And when I think about what I think God is wanting to do in this season, I think some of it's just that.
Yeah.
Just to let people know that it's okay that it has hurt some, and that he's still with us, and that the kingdom is still advancing, and that but that he's walking through it with us, and we need to hear that.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the things I've been thinking about the last 2 or 3 days it's come up, is I've been trying to process that whole trip. That trip with the Cubans was about 90% prophetic ministry. What we did, every setting, was to really prophesy to individuals, to churches, to groups, but particularly leaders particularly. And that is a bit of new territory for me and Marie, and in that, not that we haven't prophesied, but I don't think we valued it maybe the way God does. And I don't think we've appreciated how important that is, because as we prophesied over these pastors and leaders over and over and over, they would be impacted deeply and would say, you just don't know how desperately I've wanted to hear that. And so just in the last day or two, I've been talking to Marie. I spoke with Matthew Helen a little bit and talked about this. And I said, the way that we anticipated what we would be doing when we took this journey we're on was, the Lord said to go encourage and strengthen the churches, go encourage and strengthen my leaders. And so I pulled out my toolbox of all of the things I've developed and all of the concepts and classes and courses and wisdom that I had accumulated through all this time. And I was ready to go encourage and strengthen the churches. And I was ministering literally in the van from the airport to the first church. And a couple of people had picked us up, and the wife of the pastor who picked us up was sitting in the seat next to me on the way. I just leaned over and began to prophesy over her. And she just begins to weep. And she says, I have been praying for you to have a word for us. And the pastors here are desperate for encouragement and strengthening from the Lord. And something in me grabbed that, in that moment. And I've been saying, we're here to encourage and strengthen, and all of my toolbox suddenly seemed rather insignificant.
Mm.
And the Lord has been spent that whole week just really amplifying. They need to hear from me. There was a moment in there. This one goes against most of what I've taught or believed. It said, I got this sense in it. It says, right now, they don't need more knowledge. They don't need more teaching. They need to have a word from the Lord. They need to hear from me. And certainly I value the teaching, and I'm not going to, I look forward to doing the equipping stuff that we really do believe is a big part of it. But it felt like the Lord was using this whole trip to go, encouraging and strengthening may just be saying, the Lord is with you. The Lord sees you. The Lord loves you. He is still with you. He hasn't abandoned you. This season will end, and it will be okay, and you're going to win. The mission is advancing. The kingdom is advancing. And boy, as we just did that, it was redirecting. I mean, I have story after story they brought back. I mean, there was many who talked about, like, I was about to quit my church. I had one say, I've been trying to work up my plan to leave ministry, and I don't have that. I don't want to do that now. What you gave me, it has given me life, has given me hope in this next season, and that's pretty humbling. It's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
It's not always going in with the new and best and great ideas. Sometimes it's just simply, here's what the Lord sees in you. And here's his heart for you. Here's his passion for you. And boy, that is carrying some weight. So I'm excited to see what's next. I don't know where all this goes.
Yeah.
But it's an exciting time and an exciting adventure. Anyway, that got heavy in a hurry. Oh, in Cuba, just for the fun of, as an aside, Cuba is cool.
Yeah.
I mean, just as a place, one of the neatest places I've ever been. But they have this really neat classic car culture, probably one of those unintended consequences of revolutions and embargoes and all the things that have gone on, is that they're frozen in car years in about 1959 when the revolution occurred, so that there were no more American cars imported after 1959. And American cars are extremely highly valued. So what they have is a culture now that, one of the highest goals is to own a nice American car. And they're all pre-1959. So you saw everything. I'm talking about probably 40 to 50% of the non-commercial traffic was pre-1959 classic American cars. And they are mint. They are perfect. They have them. They've got the neatest paint, and the chrome is polished, and they're super highly valued and taken care of. I love that about the way it works. Is that one of the pastors came to pick me up in a 1952 Chevrolet, and real proud of the car, and I would be. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
And just that was such a joy to just ride down the street. I felt like I was at a classic car show. Every time I turned around, you're sitting in a stoplight and there's a 57 Chevy and a 52 Ford parked next to you. And it's a little surreal, but it's awesome. Just love that. And then next to it will be a horse-drawn cart.
Oh, wow.
Just such a, I don't know, just a unique, probably nowhere else in the world, unique culture has developed there. As I said, an unintended consequence of some of the situations and politics. And
Sure.
so you've got this frozen in time piece of culture that is just amazing to participate, just to be able to go walk through. And somebody said, "Do you have any pictures of ministry?" I said, "I think I got 2 pictures of ministry and 97 classic car pictures." So that's just the way it worked.
So I am going to need those to put them as the background to this video.
I'll give you some car pictures. I love them.
How do you like being itinerant?
I love it. It's different. I'm exhausted at the moment. Let's see, we're still, I think it'll settle down when we have a place to live.
Yeah.
So we've driven about 7,500 miles in a matter of 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So, and I'm about to drive another 500 and 500 back. So anyway, that's anything else you got? I talked a lot.
I don't have any other questions. Amy's like, she's beating on my door.
All right. Well, thank you for doing this with me.
No problem.
You drag it out of me, you do.
Just smile and nod. It just works.
You got a gift. All right, sweetheart. I'll talk to you in a few days.
Okay. Love you.
Love you.